cooking is everything. I am one of those people that was put on this planet because they love to eat. My name's John Chantarasak. I'm the chef owner of Anglo. The restaurant is based in Marylebone in central London. Anglo is essentially centered around the two sides of my heritage. My father is from Bangkok and my mother is from the UK. And at the restaurant, we take a lot of inspiration from Thailand, from the food and the culture, the music and the art. Today, we're making a dish called khao kluk kapi. In Thai, this means rice, mixed and shrimp paste. It's one of the dishes that I remember the most when we were in Thailand. My grandma used to make this a lot for our family, and I have fond memories of my grandma and also sitting around the family dining table in Bangkok. Everyone digging into this dish brings back a lot of happy memories for me. It was actually my grandmother that said to me that if she was in the UK, she wouldn't be importing ingredients from Thailand, like fresh ingredients especially, to produce those dishes. My grandma has now passed away, but to know that we're still sort of carrying on her traditions and her recipes through our restaurant is a particularly heartwarming thing. The process would be to make a chili paste in a pestle and mortar, where you would take chilies, garlic, coriander root, and you would pound those together with a little salt. Once you've created a smooth paste, you then add shrimp paste and sugar. Essentially, the shrimp paste is kind of funky and salty, and the sugar is sweet, and these things balance each other out. Once that's formed into a paste, that's kind of your aromatic paste that you're going to pair with rice. When you're adding the chilies at this stage, that's kind of down to personal preference on how spicy or how mild you want the dish. The next step would be to fry this paste out in oil. The way that you know it's kind of fried out and cooked is you can smell that the paste becomes quite aromatic. You don't want it to catch, you want to go over quite a low heat at this point. And then through that, you would add cooked jasmine rice that's had time to chill, ideally overnight, so that the grains are separated. And when you introduce it to the shrimp paste, it allows it to keep individually formed grains that can be evenly coated and seasoned by this chili, sugar, shrimpy kind of flavor. You just want to kind of move it around the wok or the pan for 2-3 minutes. And that's sort of the backbone of this recipe, the shrimp paste rice. And then traditionally, you would eat this with lots of different embellishments and garnishes. Essentially, it's like a deconstructed fried rice. Some of the traditional style condiments that come alongside, one is something called mu wan, which means sweet pork. And the preparation for this is to take pork shoulder, pork belly, whatever you can get, and you would steam this to make it tender and then cut it into small bite-sized pieces. The next thing to do is to create a caramel that you flavor with dry spices. So you would start off by toasting your spices. In this instance, we're using star anise and cassia bark. Cassia has sort of a flavor reminiscent to cinnamon. Star anise obviously has that anise flavor that's sort of known throughout almost Chinese Thai cooking. The next step would be to melt sugar in a pan or a wok, add water and fish sauce to this, and you're almost creating a salted caramel type flavor. And to that, you add your dry spices, let that infuse into the caramel, and then you would add the diced pork. And the idea is that you turn and coat all the pork in the caramel, and then you let it gently simmer for about 5 minutes and allow it to sit and sort of let all these sweet flavors penetrate into that. And this is one of the very traditional kind of embellishments or garnishes that you eat with this dish. One of the other accompaniments that we've prepared for this version of the dish is little dried shrimp that you normally find in the marketplaces and traditionally in a lot of Thai recipes. Deep frying them in a pot of oil, strain them off, and you get little crispy, sort of salty umami nuggets. So it's one of the other little components that I think makes this dish really pop and shine. Another very traditional garnish is almost like egg ribbons. So the process would be cracking an egg into a bowl, whisking it up with a little bit of seasoning, usually a pinch of salt, pinch of sugar, and a pinch of white pepper. And then on a non-stick pan, you just want to smear it with oil and then coat that whole surface of the pan with a very thin layer of egg. Essentially, you're cooking a sort of thin egg crepe. Once it's cooked and settled, you can flip. You don't really want color at this point, but you just want, obviously, the egg to all be cooked through. Once it's done, you allow it to cool, roll it into a little cigar, and you slice it thinly into little ribbons. And again, this is one of the very traditional kind of accompaniments that comes with this dish. There's always vegetables, there's always kind of fruits, and there's always herbs. So in this recipe, we're using Granny Smith apple. The reason we use it is because traditionally you would eat like a sour fruit with this, like a green mango. Obviously these don't grow in the UK, so we reach for something that's more local, more attributing to the seasonal calendar. I mean, Granny Smith apple I find has that like very like sour tartness that's very nice and refreshing and adds those like bursts of acidity against things like the sweet pork. And then some of the vegetables we're using, we've got some sliced shallots, green beans, radish, and then you can just pick and choose like what's available to you and like what is around in your current season. When you speak to chefs, they take a lot of pride in their knives. I in particular have been building my collection out for 10, 12 years. It's a piece of kit that you buy it and you hope that it will last forever. I buy all my knives from one person, a guy called Sam, who has a company called Cut Boy in Bangkok. One of the really interesting things about what Sam does is he has spent a lot of time making relationships in Japan. The families would have historically have made samurai swords back when that was heavily demanded. Now in the 21st century, fewer samurai swords are demanded in Japan, but these families have kind of turned their art form towards kitchen knives. So they have taken the skill of making swords and they have, over the decades, refined that into making kitchen knives. And Sam's got this really deep understanding with these craftspeople from Japan and always has like the best knowledge of knives. So I just trust him and I always buy all my knives from him, and that's been like a nice relationship again to have over like 10, 12 years. I still to this day, every time I'm in Bangkok, go to his shop and get very tempted to buy another knife, even though I don't need any more. For herbs, we're just using some Thai basil, some coriander. To serve, you would just put a mound of rice in the center of a plate, and then around that mound of rice, you would add a small pile of every single bit that you've prepared. There's a chance here as well to add some sliced chilies, so if you want to go a bit spicier, you can. There needs to be some acidity in the dish, so it would always be served with wedges of lime. And the idea is that once you've kind of assembled your rice and accompaniments, you squeeze the lime all over and then you just toss everything together, almost just eat it like a fried rice. When I was living in Thailand, I studied during the weekdays and I worked in restaurants kind of like on my evenings and sometimes on Saturdays. But Sundays were always days that I had off and I would always go and spend that time with my family in the family house. No one else except my grandmother really liked to spend time in the kitchen, and because obviously I was studying and training to be a chef, it was something that was very interesting to me, and that was the area of the house that I would like gravitate towards. I was also starting to like learn Thai when I was living out there, and my grandmother doesn't really speak English, so it was like this nice like juxtaposition where we were like bonding over cooking together, and I was speaking kind of broken Thai while she was speaking broken English to me, and we really bonded over those times. Cooking is everything. I am one of those people that was put on this planet because they love to eat. I think for me, when I realized that you could learn recipes, learn how to cook, you could essentially just be like, oh, what do I want to eat for dinner tonight? Look up a recipe, and 9 times out of 10, I can pretty much just follow that recipe and cook it for myself. And I think that's like a really exciting thing to be able to do. I know that everyone doesn't really have that skill, and I don't take it for granted that I've kind of got this innate training where, you know, essentially you can just cook whatever you want, and that's really exciting.